Hi, today we are going to look at error handlers in Excel. Now, what is an error handler? Error handler is a formula that detects whether if your calculation or another formula resulted in an error and gives you the possibility to deal with it. So first error handler we are going to look at is if error. Now let's start with something simple. We are going to do a lookup of a value that we will provide in this cell, and we will do the lookup in our set of values here. Now, what we want to look for is obviously the first column because we have only one, and we want the exact match, so we can type in here either 0 or false. So if I type in 5 that is not on our list, the formula will result in an error. If I, on the contrary, type in 1, which is on our list, it will return 1. Now let's get back to the version with the error. What I can do is I can replace the error message here with a text or a value depending on what I choose. So let's start by typing if error. Right, now we need to provide it either the cell or the formula that will calculate, and then we want to type in the message. So for example, this will say value not available. Right, and now whenever the formula, the calculation will result in an error, we will get this text message. Now if it doesn't, we will get the value itself. How is this useful? Well, we can nest the formulas in the if error and do kind of a decision tree. So let's look at our example, and we can move the formula into our if error function. So we can nest it here. And just to show you that it works the same, I can just simply change the value here. So I can say that I want 5 and the value is not available. Now in this scenario, we want to copy the VLOOKUP function and replace the text. But in the second VLOOKUP, we will refer to the second set of values. Now, as you can see, the value is found. And how this function works is it performs the first part, and if it results in an error, it performs the second part. Now let's look at another example of a value that is not on both of the list. So in that case, our nested formula will still return an error. And what we can do is we can nest it with another if error formula. And then here I can say not found. Right? Now, if I type in a value that is either on one or the other list, it will return the correct value. And if I type in a value that is not on both of the lists, then it will result in the text value not found. Another type of error handler is error. And in this case, the return value is true or false, depending on whether if your formula results in an error or not. And there is only one argument, which is the formula itself. So by the same example, if we do a VLOOKUP, so let's do a VLOOKUP to our cell. Let's look up in our set of values, and let's say 1, 0. Again, 0 is for false, so for a direct match. And if I type in a value that is on the list, again, it will result in 4. So now if I type in is error, and be cautious because as you can see here, there are two types. So one is error and the other is error. For now, we want the second option, and we point it to our cell. It will return false as the formula calculates properly. Now, if I change that to 5, it will return true. Use case scenario, I can build a simple if formula, so I can say if this results in error, then let's say there is no such value, right? And if the formula calculates properly, I want to return the value of this formula. Now, in case my formula returns with an error, I will get a text message, and if it doesn't, I will get a value. This is a much simpler version of this function because it basically operates on checking whether if your formula calculates or not. Now, another set of error catchers that are largely underestimated are error type and isError. Let's start with error type. Now, error type returns the error code connected with your specific error type. Again, by example, if I do a VLOOKUP of this value in our dataset 1, 0, and I type in, for example, 22, which is on our list. And now I want to say error type. And as you can see, it provides me a list of numerical values referring to specific error types. Now I can point it to our cell. And in case when our formula calculates properly, error type will result in not available, as properly calculating values are not on the selection list. But whenever I select something that is not on our list, so let's say 6, now error type identifies this error as not available and returns the number 7. Now, a practical use case for this is the ifs function. So if I select the ifs function, I can say if the error type is number 7, then I can say I know that is value not available, right? And then if the error type of this formula is equal to 2, I know that it's the division by 0, right? Okay, yes, we are missing a semicolon here. Cool. Now, as you can see, if I have the #NA result, so it is a not available value, I get the text value not available. If I want to divide this by 0, I will get the division by 0 message. Once again, if I perform a calculation that doesn't return an error, I will get an NA. This is very practical for designing user forms, user interfaces, and in general, giving the end user information on the type of the mistake and how to handle that. Now, our last error catcher is a simplified version of the isError function, but an important distinction, because if I go with a VLOOKUP again, and we want to look up our cell in the values list, let's say 1, 0, of course, yes, and I want to type in something that is on our list. Now I want to say isError. And now see that we are selecting the first version, so the shorter version, and I want to point it to our cell. Now, like in case of isError, the return value is either true or false. So in this case, it will be false because the formula clearly calculated correctly. Now, if I change that to something that is not on the list, the value here will remain false because this function is limited to checking all the errors except the not available error, so except this error. So if I go ahead and do a division, let's say this value by 0, it will return the value true because this is an error indeed, and the error is different than hash NA. Now, the practical use case of that is that you can have one detector for NA, so not available values, if you're working on large data sets, and another detector that you will be sure of that will give you any indicator of any other error other than the not available value. So I hope you found this helpful. Like, share, subscribe, and we will meet in the next video.